Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, venture capitalist, securities analyst, and advisor, Morty Davis is a Wall Street legend. In addition, Mr. Davis is an outstanding economist and highly articulate, incisive, and very entertaining political analyst and strategist. He's Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical economic and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on getting into real estate is Eli Verschleiser. Through his companies, Mr. Verschleiser has been involved in over $10 billion of real estate transactions. He is also an entrepreneur and is involved in numerous international and community organizations. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Verschleiser.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday, 6:30 again, and I'm back with you, my beloved participant in this podcast. You are so great because you add so much to the value and the entertainment and knowledge that this podcast produces each Wednesday night. So you're my most beloved cohorts because your contributions as you drop your notes add to my wisdom, and even once in a while I get a little upset because some of the criticisms seem a bit harsh, but then I appreciate them because it opens my mind and makes me think about the validity of your thoughts as they differ from mine, and it adds to my total knowledge and my broadens my wisdom as I can see the value of what you're advocating or what you're insisting on. So keep up the good work, and God bless you. I love you. And as I say, you're my most beloved compatriots in this podcast, and you do so much to make it a better program for all our listeners. So welcome back. And without further ado, let's get started. One thing I always like to tell you, because I love you so much, when I was young, I was always depressed. I always was depressed because I was born in 1929 when the Great Depression, the worst depression in the history of the United States, broke out. Unemployment reached 25%. It was just hazardous, and there were no welfare programs as there are today, so that people who were very poor actually died of hunger, or if they got old without money, they lived on the streets homeless, and they went to poorhouses, which were homes for the homeless and those on total poverty, and they were abused there and mistreated. So the introduction of things like Social Security and unemployment insurance was a blessing, even though when President Roosevelt, who was president at the time, introduced those programs, was called a communist because he was introducing programs that helped people even though they might not be fully employed or employed at all. So as a consequence, since I was always depressed, I couldn't get out of that, well, what's the word? Funk, that terrible feeling of being down and depressed until I came across a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Bishop Sheehan, a Catholic bishop who led a church in mid-Manhattan, one of the top churches, Catholic churches in Manhattan at the time. And it changed my life because when I read that book and adopted the attitude of being positive, no matter how bad it might have seemed, and taking a positive attitude and thinking about it as a learning process to be positive and to handle negative events and difficulties without tension or without getting all shook up and really terribly depressed. So that changed my life, reading that book, The Power of Positive Thinking, and one other book that I came across in the same period, shortly thereafter, by Dale Carnegie, a brilliant nonfiction writer who had written a bestseller called, worldwide bestseller called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which was followed by another book that I came across by him called How to Stop Worrying, Start Living. And with those two books under my belt, in my knowledge and my mind, and practicing and following their guidance, I never suffered the kind of depression and bad moods that I had prior to that. As a consequence, I decided, for the benefit of those I love, starting with my spouse, my children, my grandchildren, my best friends, my neighbors, my fellow citizens, and my fellow human beings throughout the world. I decided to convey some of those ideas to everybody that I cared about, and even those that I didn't necessarily know, but that I felt would help improve their life, make them happier. I use the word happier, although I use it with some reservations, because in this country we think of happiness as somebody who's just had a quart of scotch or vodka or something, or is happy and smiling and banging his friends on the back, seeming to be outrageously happy until the effect wears off and they're sick and suffering immediately after the impact of the drugs or the alcohol wears off, and are more miserable than they ever were. They're suffering from headaches and stomach upheavals and whatnot. So I'm talking about the happiness that comes from contentment, that makes you feel good, not makes you instantly smile and laugh and bang your compatriots on the jaw, on the back, and seemingly makes the whole group very happy, when in reality it's very momentary and it's not happiness. So I decided since it changed my life, reading those two books, The Power of Positive Thinking by Bishop Sheehan, and the one by Dale Carnegie, which I read and studied and practiced, called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And so I dedicated my efforts for the next 12 years to learning everything about creating not happiness as we think it in this country, but real contentment, good feeling about yourself, good feeling about the world, in spite of all the things that occur every day that are sure to depress you, as occurs so often when we do this podcast and deal with the week's big issues, which are inevitably bound to depress you if you're at all normal, as it does me, because the thing that makes all the headlines, the New York Times or the magazines that you receive, or all of the media, your network TV or your cable TV, because all the interruptions are never, first of all, they're annoying because usually they occur in the middle of some program that you're involved in, you're enjoying, and they announce either mass shooting of kindergarten kids, young children, and their teachers in class, and of floods and fires and all the negatives that are announced and interrupt your program. Good news is never that urgent to announce or make the headlines, unless it's way out of the norm. Good news, or any news, unless it's horrendous, doesn't make the front pages. Somebody could donate $50 million to a charity or $100 million to a college to make it function better and teach better. Big, real assets. And those don't get these intrusion into your programs that you're involved in. So that being the case, I decided to dedicate my life and my years subsequent thereto to learning all of the things along the lines of the two books that I just described. And so I spent the next 12 years accessing all the knowledge that I could gather from all the brilliant authors and sources since the beginning of mankind, primarily from biblical sources that gave all kind of positive suggestions on how to live a more contented life, and from all of the great philosophers, going back to the Greeks, to Aristotle and Plato, right through the present day, Freud, and all of the writers and authors, right up to the time that I started to write this book. So because I love you and I want you to enjoy not happiness as we define it, but contentment, uplifting feelings about yourself, about your environment, inspiring thoughts instead of negative thoughts, and turn negatives into positives by these attitudes of gratitude that are suggested and taught in these books. So that's why if you have your TV on to this podcast, I have the book that I wrote the next 12 years called Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. The bottom of the page, you can't see, of the cover adds how to be happy no matter what. And that's what I learned to do. I'm happy even in the face of tragedy, even though of the worst disappointments or failures, or because it's my attitude and my determination to appreciate all of life gifts, the present. That's why it's called the present, because they're gifts from birth, from God, from the privilege of being born and experiencing life if we choose to take advantage of the good things that life offers. So I spent the next 12 years gathering up all this information. Incidentally, just for your knowledge, the most popular course at Harvard in recent years that's always overwhelmed in the number of people that sign up for it, and Harvard can't accommodate, or this course cannot accommodate it, given by an Israeli psychologist, author, and people love it. And each year it's overwhelmingly overbooked, and unless you do it early, you can't even get into the course. It shows you how prevalent is this desire for people to achieve real happiness, not just from drugs or alcohol or whatnot, but from changing their attitude of their life, their attitude of experience in life, and showing a gratitude and feeling a gratitude for that, all the good things that are available to us, and putting a positive angle or attitude of gratitude towards all things that happen, even negative things that you can deal with and handle much better and turn into pluses. You learn from the negatives how to be positive. You learn how to be a better friend or a better parent, because when I go see a friend that experienced one of the major tragedies in life, one that's unbelievably heartbreaking, losing a parent or a child, it's irreconcilable. The guy is what he's gone through. It's heartbreaking, and just helping my friend feel better, I learned how to deal with it in a way that makes more sense than I used to feel. I was helping him by telling him what Solomon taught us, this too shall pass, because that doesn't help a great deal. We all know everything passes. But I learned to get him to appreciate how much I identify with his depression and his loss and his heartbreaking experience that he was going through, and then get him off that momentary tragedy that can absorb his mind totally, and start to talk to him about what a wonderful parent he had, or what a wonderful child he had, and it's a terrible loss, and it breaks my heart that he's going through this. But then I try to talk to him about things that will get him beyond this moment. And then I say, so don't just think this is the end of your world. It may feel like that, but remember, last year in November, we went to Vermont skiing, and we're scheduled to do that again later this year. And think of all the fun we had and how much we're going to enjoy that again. So I know what you're going through right now is irreconcilable. There's no explanation, and my heart breaks for you. And I feel that feeling because I've been through similar experience, and it's so hard to deal with. But I get him to think about things beyond the present moment, and that makes a big difference, because then he starts to think of, yes, we had a great time, and we're doing it again this year. So I learned to do not just what Solomon said, this too shall pass. That doesn't help a great deal. It may pass, but the hurt of this heartbreaking event is still with you. So I identify totally with heartbreak. I share it with him. I tell him, I know how bad you feel. I went through the same thing. I couldn't get over it. And then I try to get him to think beyond that and the upcoming future that still has a lot of hope and promise and joyous events forthcoming. So I say I learned that, and I learned so many good things to help my spouse and my kids and my friends and all my loved ones, all my neighbors, all my fellow citizens, Americans, and all my fellow human beings throughout the world. The reason I present this book to you now is usually this podcast, as you know, as it discusses the week's events, overwhelmingly, inevitably, talks about all the disasters and all the frightful, horrible experiences that make the headlines and break into all our media, into our favorite televisions, listening network and cable, and all our magazine covers, and because good news doesn't make the headlines. It might make page 32, but it doesn't get on the front page. Well, it'll get on the front. If you want to get it, be sure to get on the front page. Create some horrendous event. One way maybe is if you do a mass murder, a serial murder, and even that doesn't do it because we have so many in this country. But you do a serial murder, and you take the bodies of your victim and put them in the freezer, and say how you're going to have them for dinner or something. I mean, it's just stuff that you don't want to hear and you don't want to believe. So I wrote this book to help those that I care about, particularly my spouse, my children, my grandchildren, my favorite friends, all my friends, my neighbors, all my loved ones, and every one throughout my society and throughout the world. So, without further ado, I just want to tell you, if you get a chance, first chance you get, as a matter of fact, as soon as this program is over, run out and get a copy of Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. As I say, the bottom cover, unless you have a giant screen, doesn't show up on my screen. It probably doesn't on yours. The bottom of the page says how to be happy no matter what. Happy in the sense of contentment, not being drugged or on alcohol. And so, given that, and given the nature of this podcast generally, although today it's going to be uplifting because of the amazing guest we were lucky enough to induce to come and discuss a terrific book he's just finished writing and published. It's called So You Want to Get Into Real Estate. One of the best formulas for getting rich without doing anything that's illegal or which is available to every one of us. So we have Eli Verschleiser, who started from scratch. He never went to university to study real estate. He never took courses. The one course he took is a course of life. He bought his first property because he heard real estate was lucrative, and then he learned from that as he went through the trials and tribulations of owning real estate, of owning a building, of owning some acreage, and the demands it made on his time and disappointments he had. And so I'm delighted to introduce Eli Verschleiser and his book, his fabulous book, So You Want to Get Into Real Estate. He will tell you about his pioneering journey into this field without any prior knowledge, but learning through experience of doing the action and dealing with the disappointments, the failures, the difficulties, that can be so discouraging and heartbreaking. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Eli Verschleiser, a very successful real estate entrepreneur. He's done everything from owned one-family homes and acreage that he developed, construction, all the way up to a project he was doing in Philadelphia called the Trump Tower, where he partnered with Donald Trump to build a 40-story condominium and office building. Unbelievable. I flew down with Donald Trump on his helicopter to invite the media and to put Donald Trump on television and promote this building. And it sold out that night. All the condos and all of the office space. It was remarkable. So he's had every kind of experience, from disappointing failures and reversals to what I said just now, to constructing buildings, to upgrading buildings, to selecting real estate in different areas that he felt had promise. And without any experience, he turned out to be a genius that any of you can do, because none of you have less experience than he had when he entered and he launched this journey into real estate. So we're privileged and lucky and excited to have Eli Verschleiser join us today and discuss his book, So You Want to Get into Real Estate. He's going to explain it simply and from a doer's point of view, somebody that didn't just learn about it or studied in school about it, but went through the school of hard knocks, that if you started out as he did with no prior training or knowledge or other than your pioneering attitude to go on this voyage, this exciting voyage to get rich through real estate. It's one of the most effective means of getting rich without a great deal of knowledge. If you stick to it and learn from your mistakes and the ongoing disappointments as you get to be successful. He's very successful, and he's going to share those views with you. So without further ado, I want to introduce Eli Verschleiser.
Well, thank you, Morty. First of all, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your podcast. I know so many people listen like a religion. You're creating a religion out there so that people could get their happiness guaranteed or their misery back. And
Don't thank me. I thank you, because it's a big help. I'm sure this program today will help many people that choose to follow some of your guidance to make enormous gains financially and even become millionaires or multimillionaires. So thank you, and I'm excited for you to discuss your book.
so to give you a brief background of my history and the book,
Yes.
I never thought that I would write a book, but I was inspired by so many amazing writers and authors, and this book came about over the years. It's a culmination of about 5 to 7 years of writing, and it started with taking excerpts of teachings that I had written for employees when we had a real estate investment banking firm. And over the years, I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young men and women come up to the office, and I would ask them the same question. So what do you want to do with your life? And almost every single time, these young individuals would tell me the same thing. I want to be in real estate. And I would spend hours speaking to them about what that means, because for the most part, if you wake up, you're in real estate. If you're on this planet, you're in real estate. And over a period of time, in our conversations, they realized that they didn't necessarily know what that meant and didn't necessarily want to be in it. So I decided to write the book, which articulates from the beginning, from the smallest type of transaction, from where as an individual his mindset should be, whether or not it is actually for something that you should go into. It's certainly not a get-rich-quick scheme, but it's certainly something that you can build generational wealth in.
Could you give us a brief background of your history and this book?
So
Show the book.
the book is the book could be, we just published the book. The book could be found on Amazon.com and other retailers. The hardcover is coming shortly, and the Kindle version is out already. This book is really for people that want to know themselves, and want to then decide to go into real estate. And it walks through that process. It walks through whether or not you are the type of person that could succeed in real estate, and specifically in different facets of the real estate industry, as well as if it's something that you should not get involved in from the beginning.
What do people really mean when they say, I want to get into real estate?
That's a great question, and usually my question to these people are the same. It's one of the most common themes at a dinner table in this country. You'll always find someone saying, hey, I want to get into real estate. And without the knowledge and understanding of what that really means.
They're already in real estate if they live in a house or an apartment.
Right. So real estate has so many facets to it, from owning property to managing property to brokering properties to corporate real estate to public companies that own real estate to developing real estate. It's unlimited. It continues in so many different facets, and each one is very, very similar yet very different. Whether it's hospitality or retail, whether it's office or multifamily, to single-family homes. The St. Louis Federal Reserve recently put out a figure that there is $35 trillion of untapped equity locked up in the American single-family homeowners' properties. $35 trillion. That's probably 6 times more than all the commercial real estate in this country. And that's just in single-family homes that Americans have tied up in their homes as equity. That's a big market. A $35 trillion market is a huge market. If you take just a small piece of it, and whether it's a service business, a brokerage business, a development business, there are so many components that you can make money in that space. But that is just the single-family world in this country.
Who is this for, this book for, and who is it not for?
The book is for everybody. The book is not for someone that has no interest in real estate. However, there are some exciting parts to the book that I inserted about my own career. So as you had mentioned earlier, like the Trump transaction that we did in Philadelphia, and that was thanks to you, and many other types of transactions that I go through in what I call the fun facts sections of the book. From an ex-partner biting me on my leg, and to a brawl on Wall Street. It's all related to this industry, and it's all things that I've gone through, from making tens of millions of dollars to losing tens of millions of dollars in transactions. So it's all in the book. The book is for people that want to get acclimated with real estate from the beginning, from a small single-family investment to building a major skyscraper in Manhattan today. It goes through each step, and it helps someone understand whether their temperament is to develop a building or to manage apartments, whether their temperament is to underwrite deals, which means figuring out and putting them into spreadsheets, or buying and fixing up small single-family homes and flipping them. People should evaluate themselves to see if they have the right temperament for real estate. And that is where I start off in the book.
And what is the first mistake that beginners initially make?
The first mistake that I made was that I invested with an individual who had an interesting transaction, and I gave him the money to do the deal. 6 months, 8 months, 12 months went by, and I was so excited, and I kept on driving by the bad neighborhood in Brooklyn and looking at the building, and nothing had moved forward. Till I finally said to the guy, give me the building back, give me the building that I invested in, and I put up the money for, and I will figure out how to develop it. And it was a small 4-family and 3-store building in one of the worst neighborhoods of Brooklyn at the time. So I think beginners don't realize that real estate is a business like any other business. The business is something that you need to work hard on, need to be completely committed to, and stay focused on the specific asset class or department of real estate that you want to focus on.
Is it location, or timing that is most dominant in terms of helping realize success?
It's a great question. Everybody always says, is it location, or timing? And if history is any tell, it's a little bit of both. And timing is extremely important. Location is extremely important. And at the end of the day, you just need to be able to make sure that you don't have too much leverage and that you're not in a location that's going to go down, or an area that may lose the need for the real estate, which is what ultimately brings you your return on your investment.
What was the biggest red flags from a rent roll?
That's a very interesting question. Rent rolls or income statements from any property are the most important items to look at before you acquire the property. So what you need to do when you're looking at any rent roll or income statement is really to understand the line items versus the comparable line items to those numbers. As an example, if an area has a 5% vacancy, you need to understand that, and you need to be able to use a 5% vacancy in your underwriting. These line items could be the make it or break it of your transaction.
You know, my father-in-law had a friend. He told me only buys the most depressed area buildings, run down, occupied by people that often skip paying their rent and so forth. And I said, my God, that's terrible. Those are neighborhoods where you're even frightened to collect the rent, to go collect the rent. And they destroy the property. You go into the hall, they're run down, the mailboxes are torn apart. And in retrospect, I found it turned out to be genius, because he bought buildings, and his logic was he buys the lowest rent buildings, because they'll always be occupied, because there'll always be poor people. If you buy the expensive rentals, they're often, during tough times, they're often sold, or the occupants can't meet the rent. So in retrospect, it turned out not to only be genius from that point of view, but over the years, those were depressed areas that commanded little money to invest in, and over time, they became gentrified. Like the area in Brooklyn that you mentioned was a depressed area. Today it's a high rent area. The ones in Harlem or the Lower East Side were tremendously depressed. They've gone up to be select, fabulous areas, location-wise. So he made a fortune just sitting on those houses he bought, because they were cheap and the rents were low and so forth, and in due course became immensely valuable. Harlem properties became tremendously valuable when the President of the United States at the time, after he left, Bill Clinton couldn't get a place in Manhattan because every building that offered him space, all the neighbors objected to his coming to the building, because there would be Secret Service all over the place and overwhelmingly costly security issues. So by virtue of that coincidence, he wound up making a fortune, because these depressed areas today are some of the most valuable New York City areas. Williamsburg and Brooklyn, different parts of Brooklyn, Harlem, the Lower East Side.
Soho and Tribeca was like that.
Yeah,
Manhattan.
yeah.
Soho used to be all garbage, buildings for garbage trucks.
Right.
And it became the hottest neighborhood in Manhattan. Gentrification always happens. It's just following the train.
What have the difficult parts taught you about partnership, risk, and judgment? How do you pick good partners?
I'm not sure if I could tell you how to pick good partners, because I've had some terrible partners in my life, and I don't know if I'm a great character of a great judgment of individuals' character.
You haven't learned from those choices?
That being said, I've learned a little bit from it, but I seem to not necessarily pick the best partners. However, I've been able to figure out how to stay in my lane and bring in partners to do exactly what I need them to do, which is not my expertise. So if it would be developing a building, I would structure the transaction, do the financial side of the transaction, and someone that has a lot of experience and has a good reputation is someone that I would partner with to actually build the building. That being said, it's an extremely, extremely, extremely important lesson that you can either be in business or you can be in litigation. And litigation, unfortunately, there are many unscrupulous people out there, and you can spend years and years and not moving forward and not being in real estate, just being in a fight over something that never materializes anyways.
Maybe many of those partners picked you because you were a novice. You were inexperienced, and whatever they told you, you bought into.
Generally, I'm always giving people the benefit of the doubt. That's part of my nature, and you are 100% right that could have been they could have picked me to become their partner, so they made money in the transaction.
How should new investors think about taking on debt and leverage?
That's a great question. Debt, from my perspective, and leverage is your way to becoming extremely wealthy. Without it, the returns don't work, and without it, this country wouldn't be the most amazing capitalism, offer the most amazing opportunities. You cannot buy a building without debt or leverage because your returns just won't work. However, you'll always need to remember that too much debt is where all deals fail.
All right, we're almost out of time. I really appreciate you joining us. To our listeners, I encourage you to run out and get this book. So you want to get into real estate. If you have any questions, send them to me, and I'll forward them to Eli. He's a perfect individual to learn from because he started from scratch. He made all of the mistakes that beginners make, and he can guide you through this in his book. So you want to get into real estate. God bless you. Have a great week. I love you. I look forward to being with you. Same time next week, 6:30 Wednesday. And Eli, thank you for bringing this valuable path and direction and instruction and knowledge of how to make it in real estate. Most of the fortunes ever made early on were made in real estate, long before there was a stock market. So it's invaluable. This book is invaluable. Run out and get a copy if you want to get into real estate. Instead of making all the mistakes that Eli experienced through his own hard knocks and having a good jump on entering this field. God bless you. I hope you all make a fortune in real estate. It's there to be made. If you don't over-leverage, if you take on too much debt because you're too enthusiastic about the prospects of the asset you're acquiring, the real estate you're acquiring. Short of that, it's a wonderful field. It's exciting. It allows for you to express your creativity and to really become wealthy, indeed a multimillionaire. Have a great week. I'm sorry that the time ran out so fast, but when you're dealing with a subject that so many people want to learn about, even a day, even a week is not enough time. So having only 1 hour is sad, but I hope you get the flavor. And if you really want to get into the field and prevent a lot of the mistakes and disappointments and losses that Eli had to go through, get a copy of this book. So you want to get into real estate. Good luck. God bless you. I hope you make a fortune. I hope you become multimillionaires. And if you get this book, you're increasing your chances dramatically of being a success. God bless you. Have a great week. I love you. I hope that you and all your loved ones have a better day, every day of your life from here on out. Bye. See you next Wednesday, 6:30.